Hey guys, what's going on? James here, and I'm joined today by Corey, my wonderful, wonderful friend, the Play Reaction. Go subscribe to him. Actually, he's really Corey. You're what, 25 away now from
Yep.
1,000?
Yep.
We're
25 exactly right now.
we're close. I want for everybody who's gonna watch this, I want Corey to hit 1,000 like at the end of this live stream.
Oh,
So
thank
we're
you.
we're
Thanks,
gunning
James.
we're gunning for it. So
It's
anyway,
gonna happen.
Corey, how are you today, my man?
I'm doing well. I'm fairly well. I'm right here. I'm a huge Braves fan, so I have the game like right next to me. Like we're just watching them melt down
Hmm.
and get kicked out of the playoffs. But other than that, I'm doing well because we didn't have a game to lose on Sunday, so that was fun.
Yeah.
And I just got to sit back and watch the Red Zone channel all day, which is it's like very therapeutic not having skin in the game aside from fantasy teams and watching the Red Zone all day. So I enjoyed the bye week.
It definitely dimmed down the stress levels and whatnot, you know. Because I remember I woke up Sunday and like you, first thing I did is I clicked on the red zone. I was like, okay. I was like, oh, this is nice. You know, I needed this because
Yeah.
imagine the stress levels we would have had. I mean, it's still gonna be there, but coming off of a 48-10 loss versus the Bears, and then the next
Ugh.
week you go in and you're like, you know, like it would have been bad. This bye week was needed for a multitude of reasons, a multitude of reasons.
Well,
So,
yeah, I tweeted this, but I'm serious. I've had a twitch in my left eye. You might see it over video and like it might just appear,
mhm.
but I've had a twitch in my left eye, and I'm tracing it back to last Sunday. Like it's been there since last Sunday. I think the Bears have put a twitch in my eye, or the Bucks have via the Bears. So
the the Bears continue to just break people,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
both in body and spirit. But Corey, we're gonna be talking about a lot today. We have a lot to pack in. We're gonna be going over some Mike Smith stuff, you know, as par for the course at this point. I want to go through some stats with you and get your opinions about some of it. We're gonna be talking about potential Mike Smith replacements, and then after that, I want to talk a little bit about moving forward into Week 6 versus the Atlanta Falcons and what we.
Moving forward, that's fun. I like moving forward.
That's the best part, right?
Let's put that Mike Smith stuff to rest, finally.
That's the best part.
Yeah,
That is the best part. Like Kevin's saying, we are 2-2, so all things considered, you know,
yeah,
we are pretty much in about as good a spot as we could have been. 2-2 is better than 1-3. You know,
definitely.
we definitely could have been 1-3. But just real quick,
Oh,
Corey, or what were you gonna say?
well, I was just about to say, or 1-4, which the Falcons are now, so that's fun.
That's true. They are 1-4. We could have been 1-4. That wouldn't have been very good. But
Yeah.
just real quick, I know we've had some time to calm down and whatnot from this. We've had a whole week now essentially to calm down from this past game, and I just wanted to go through some Mike Smith stuff. Do you still think Mike Smith should be fired, or what's your opinion on it now a week later?
Yeah, so I do. I do think he should and will be fired at the end of the season at least. And if we just kind of take a step back and, obviously he's had enough time to build this defense. He's had enough players. Like his big excuse was, hey, he hasn't had the tools. Chris Baker was a schmuck and blah, 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 blah. And so finally they loaded up the D line for him and, did as much as they could, in the secondary. And while that's not the best in the league by far, I mean, it's still, there's really no excuse for Mike Smith at this point. I mean, there really isn't. But the thing that I try to do is I try to think of like not how, what's gonna give us the most satisfaction, which would be a Mike Smith firing. Like somebody's got to be a sacrificial lamb. Take a
Hmm.
step back and try to think through terms of, okay, if I'm running a business, what does business ethics tell you to do, and what does true leadership tell you to do? And Dirk Cutter has taken, and we haven't heard from Light, and we won't hear from Glazers till the end of the year
Hmm.
on this situation. But Dirk has taken the stance of like, hey, you know what? I'm the head coach. I'm going to believe in my guy. I'm going to believe in my guys, and I'm going to at least publicly be a fan of his because really all that does, if I say, if I answer reporters' questions and I'm like, yeah, Mike Smith effed up and he's got to be held accountable, and I start bashing him, then that puts even more pressure on Mike Smith. So
Hmm.
if you're not going to fire him, then you need to really, I admire Dirk for digging his heels into the ground and standing there and saying, no, it's not just Mike Smith. It's more than one piece, which he's right. As much as we don't want to admit it, he's right. It's not just Mike Smith. It's
Right.
mostly Mike Smith. But, so he's going to take a lot of flack for that. And I understand that's what a leader does. It's a leadership tactic is, sticking up for your employees or your subordinates. And I admire him for that. I also admire Dirk for, he said in his press conference today that he's asked players over the bye week to give him personal feedback, which I love. That's another like good leadership thing to do. So if I'm trying to take any type of solace out of the fact that Mike Smith is still here, it's that, okay, I actually respect it. By them saying that they're keeping him, it's like, okay, I respect their decisions moving forward. Like after that, okay, they're keeping him now. What they're moving forward in the right way, and then also I hold on to 2016 and just hope that the players all click. They simplify the defense just like 2016, and suddenly this isn't as bad as we thought it was. But that may be hoping for too much.
It's a very good point that you mentioned 2016, Corey, because I actually want to go back to that year.
It was a good year.
Somewhat. I want to talk about some statistical categories for the Bucs of that year and Mike Smith's defense in that year, and then we'll go from 2016 to 2017 to 2018. And as I'm going through these stats, I want to get your opinions of each year, kind of break it down together. So, obviously, the big thing for the 2016 year is Mike Smith's first year as the defensive coordinator. He came in and the Bucs had that 5-game winning streak where they only let up 300 yards plus twice in those 5 games. Okay, pretty impressive.
Man, what's that like?
I know. We haven't had that yet, but it's okay.
Yeah.
But taking a deeper look into the end of the year stats for that season, and I wrote down the 9 most important statistical categories. So we're gonna go through it. In rushing yards per game, the Buccaneers defense was 22nd. In passing yards per game, the Buccaneers defense was 22nd. In points per game, they were 15th. In total yards per game, they were 23rd. In penalties, they were 28th. In forced punts, they were 21st. So being number 1 for forced punts means that you're forcing the most punts.
Yeah.
In third down completion percentage, they were number 1, which means they were the best at stopping offenses on third down. Which is pretty interesting.
If there was one stat I would choose for all of those that you just listed, that's the one. That's like, okay, we can be bottom half of the league, but if we're best at that, you give your team a great chance to win. So
what I think's interesting about this is because you'd think like, oh, if they're stopping them on third down, why aren't they punting a lot?
Yeah.
That means that they're in the red zone or they're in field goal range a lot. That's that's what I came to. In sacks, they were 10th, and in takeaways, they were actually 3rd. So
that's another huge one.
What can you garner from all these categories that I just gave? Because keep in mind, I think that this was actually the season that statistically, this was the exact defense Mike Smith brought in, which was the bend but don't break defense. Would you kind of agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, what that says to me is that they made plays when they needed to. They made the right plays at the right times, and they were at the right place at the right time, and maybe a little luck was involved as well. I don't remember. Did you say sack numbers in that one?
Say what?
Did you say I may have missed it? Did you say sack numbers for that year?
Oh, I for the league ranking they were 10th. I can't exactly give you the numbers.
Okay, that's
fine.
fine.
They were 10th in the league.
So they were bottom half of the league in most statistical categories there, but they were in the top half of the league for the ones that are like the most important. Third down, turnovers, sacks. So
takeaways, points per game, 15th. That's average. That's slightly above average. Sacks.
Well, and that requires players to step up when they need to. I mean, if you remember Keith Tandy that year, he was huge for us, and the defensive line got timely sacks during that stretch. And we saw that when communication is broken down, then kind of everything opens up, and. So, yeah, I mean, all of that, nothing has surprised me yet of what you've told me. That makes a lot of sense.
Gotcha. And then we're going to get into some stuff that gets worse. 'Cause
Wonderful.
after 2016, you go to 2017, the second year of Mike Smith's system, and things just fall apart. Okay? Like pretty badly, actually.
Yeah, I remember.
Rushing yards per game, the Buccaneers went from 22nd to 23rd. Okay, hey, that's only one. What's only one ranking? Passing yards per game, they go from 22nd to 32nd. Points per game, they go from 15th to 24th. Total yards per game, they go from 23rd to 32nd. Third down completion percentage, they go from number 1 in the league to last in the league.
Man.
Okay. Penalties, okay, they did a little bit better. They were 21st. Sacks, they go from number 10 to 32nd in the league. Forced punts, they went from 21st to 32nd in the league.
Ooh.
What do you think changed in this? Like, what changed to cause such a terrible downfall, I guess you could say, of this defense? Because that's really bad. That's really bad.
That's dreadful. I don't know. Like, because it was largely the same players from the year before. And we all thought they actually got better from between 2016 and 2017 on defense. So,
right,
man, like, that's indescribable. And it really, and thinking about both years, the difference in the games were that, like, players weren't stepping up. They weren't getting sacks, and they weren't getting timely turnovers. So that was the main difference. But it was largely the same people, same scheme, and a year longer in the same scheme that these guys should have had it down.
Yeah, and I even went a little bit deeper, and I decided to see, like, who started the majority of games for the Bucs during that time, like between 2016 and 2017, and the only thing that changed were 3 starters. It was the defensive tackle next to Gerald McCoy, changing from Clinton McDonald to Chris Baker. The left outside linebacker position changed from Daryl Smith, which I love Daryl Smith, to Kendall Beckwith. And the safety position changed. One of the safety positions changed as well. I believe it was opposite Chris Conte. I believe Justin Evans came in and was the majority starter for 2017. So it's not like it's a situation where it's like, oh, the guys don't know the system. You're only getting rid of 3 out of 11 starters for that year. So that, that isn't very good. That's not very good at all, is it?
So do you think that the difference is, after that big stretch we had in 2016, that offenses started to figure out the defense, and the defense therefore never adjusted?
I think that's part of it, because you look in 2016, it's like, yeah, it's bad, but it's manageable, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, if you have a good enough offense, you can. This is so bad that it's just terrible. It's like there's not much you can do to counterbalance that. You know what I mean?
Well, and this reminds me too that our friend Robert Green at Pinnacle 3 on Twitter, he's very active through Bucs podcast or whatever, so other fans should know him. He said this. He told me this on Twitter. Keep in mind, when you read about having the worst defense over the last couple of seasons, 2017, 27 giveaways on offense, 26 takeaways on defense. So we were -1 on that. And 5 one-score losses. So that was last year.
Right. 2016,
27 giveaways, same amount of giveaways on offense. 29 takeaways. So we are +2 in 2016. And 3 one-score losses. So that's very similar.
Right.
When you start saying those stats. And I thought that was very interesting. I
also forgot to say the Bucs were 8th in takeaways in 2017.
Okay. Oh, okay. So I think what that says is that the offense is partly to blame too. And we remember last year, obviously a lot of the problem was the defense giving up the lead late. But a lot of times too, the defense would hold down and the offense would sputter out and be useless for about 3 quarters.
Right.
So, they work in tandem, they work together. And we saw even in the Bears game, we had that horrible combination of the defense just being like a hot knife through butter, and then the offense going 3 and out or 6 and out. So
you think it could be a situation where the defenders are just getting so tired because the offense is...
Well, I think it snowballs. I think they work in tandem. I think they work together. I feel like the offense when we're talking about the offense isn't without blame, which is
Right.
weird to say.
Right.
And we saw, like, as early as last week, how when the defense isn't working, and then the offense doesn't help them at all, it just becomes a snowball.
Yeah.
So,
And finally, for 2018, I want to take you through the first 4 weeks. So obviously, we've had the bye week and things could have changed, but these numbers are from these numbers are from the right after the Bucs' last game versus the Chicago Bears and where they ranked in the league. Okay, and this is actually pretty interesting. So, in rushing yards per game after week 4, the Bucs actually ranked 6th. That's pretty good, right?
Yeah.
That's top in the league. Passing yards per game, 32nd. Points per game, 32nd. Total yards per game, 31st. Hey, the only team that they were above was actually the Kansas City Chiefs. Okay.
okay.
Third down completion percentage, they were 14th. Penalties, they were 25th. Sacks, they were 26th. And forced punts, they were 26th as well. So, and this is we just talked about how, the offense has had its fair share. And I will say, in the Pittsburgh Steelers game, I completely agree with that because the offense was not doing that defense any favors.
Yeah.
3 interceptions from Ryan Fitzpatrick. One of them was returned with a pick 6. One of them, a couple of them were on the Buccaneers side of the field. That doesn't help things. But I will say that Saints game, and more recently the Chicago Bears game, that those 2 games, that doesn't help either. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was just kind of situations where the defense looked lost. And especially right now, one thing that I've been noticing is, aside from obviously the horrific pass defense we've had since Mike Smith got here, and I'll talk about that in a second, is the Bucs have been one of the highest teams in committing penalties all 3 years. That's kind of something interesting as well, isn't it?
That is. I actually wouldn't think that, because just thinking about how horrible they were with penalties under Lovie Smith, I felt like, without doing any research, that the Bucs have been better under Cutter with penalties. So I know that.
Yeah,
interesting.
I thought that was pretty interesting. And in takeaways, they actually ranked 17th. So again, this is another weird situation, isn't it? Where honestly, maybe if you're thinking about this whole situation, do you start questioning Brett Maxey and John Mox? Because that's real. If the common theme that I've been noticing is their pass defense is just not good. It's just not good, and they've tried.
Yeah.
The majority starters that have been brought in, Brent Grimes is still here, but you replace him with Carlton Davis at the second quarterback position, who's started the majority of games now at the second cornerback spot. You bring in MJ Stewart. You're always bringing in new secondary pieces every year, and it just never seems to work.
The thing is that we've been down this road, right, of blaming assistant coaches. So
yeah, the last year, the only positional coach that they fired was Jay Hayes. That was it.
They're all about Jay Hayes and who's the offensive line coach? His name is escaping me right now.
George
Warhop.
Yeah.
Warhop. Yeah, he kept his job, but Warhop and Hayes were like the two. They were everyone's favorite whipping boys as far as the coaching staff last year. And yeah, Jay Hayes got fired, but here we are with Brinson Buckner, who you and I are huge on. We love Brinson Buckner and thought that was a huge pickup. And here we are, still bottom half of the league in sacks. Now, it is just 4 games, but even Buckner himself said that he's disappointed in how they're playing.
Yeah, he just said that in a recent press conference.
So, again, we've been down that route of blaming assistant coaches, and I don't think there's a lot of clout there. I mean, I don't know how much impact assistant coaches have on players. So, when it comes to the secondary, I think what it is, I really do put a lot of blame on Mike Smith, simply because his scheme or whatever it is not really, and people blame him for having his players, line up off the line, like Vernon Hargraves, line up 10 yards past the line scrimmage, and then getting burned and not playing the player's strengths and all that stuff. For me, it all draws back to Mike Smith. And this is without knowing enough about football to really have an educated opinion.
Yeah.
But again, just
from the eyeball test.
yeah, I mean, I just draw again, just back to the original, like, position coaches. Just based on history, it just doesn't seem like position coaches have as much of an impact as like overall scheme. So,
We'll talk about positional coaches in a moment here, but the final stat that I want to talk to you about here is recently, last week, Greg Allman pointed out this one statistic on Twitter where the Buccaneers have given up 400 plus yards in the 36 games Mike Smith has been defensive coordinator. He gave up 400 plus yards in 19 out of 36 games, or 53% of the games, and 30 plus points 13 out of 36 games, otherwise 36%. So I decided to go a little bit deeper, kind of expand on that number a little bit. I thought, well, what about 300 plus yards? Because you can still lose a lot of games like that, right? 28 out of 36 games, 78%, Corey. And I thought, well, 30 points, 24 plus points, 24. If your opponent's scoring 24, you can still lose a game, right? It's reasonable.
Yeah.
20 out of 36 games, 56% of the time. So there you go.
So the part of that is the way the game itself is changing. So you can put a little bit of onus on just the fact that it's a passing league now and quarterbacks are regularly throwing for 300 and 400 yards. But at the same time, I'm sure if you put that in comparison to how other teams rank, we would still be near the bottom of the league.
Yeah.
So I think when pulling out those stats, it is necessary to compare how we're doing with the rest of the league. But yeah, no, that's still horrible. I mean, I can't polish that turd. So
not the best.
No.
But now that I've given you all these stats, Corey, I want to go to the next part of this conversation. If you get rid of this is actually Dirk Cutter pointed this out exactly. So we fire Mike Smith. Then what? I want to talk about then what, okay?
Yeah, okay.
Because everybody's been talking about it, oh, this guy, or maybe this guy, or maybe this guy, There's a couple of names. I wrote down 5 names. I talked about this recently. But I want to say before this, two guys who I thought were possible guys, and I thought about this in 2 scenarios. Is one, who would you bring in if you fired Mike Smith in 2 weeks? Who would you have be the interim defensive coordinator? And then the second scenario I thought of was if you wait until the end of the season and then you fire Mike Smith, then you can bring in anybody.
Right.
So I thought about 2 guys who could be interim replacements, and I want to get your thoughts on both of them.
Okay.
And then I thought about 3 guys who could be end of the season replacements, and I want to get your thoughts on them. Okay.
All right.
So we're going to start with the interim replacements, and the first guy is a very popular guy, which he's a very, very popular guy. He's Buccaneers defensive line coach, Brentson Buckner. Okay? Now, a little bit of a history, Corey. Now, Brentson Buckner actually played as a defensive lineman from 1994 to 2005. He's 47 years old, which, I talked about this. Bringing age into this equation is kind of a big deal because remember the whole Jeff Tedford situation where he had health issues that comes with health and getting older and whatnot. He just left. he had to leave. That's not good, And people were even saying, well, what if Mike Smith has a heart attack? It's like, yeah, that's actually a legitimate question, So I know that's horrible and that's extreme, and I don't believe that Mike Smith's in poor health. What I mean is that, just talking in recent history for the Bucs, a situation like that can happen. So I think age can play into it a little bit. What are your overall thoughts about Brentson Buckner? Because his coaching history is not extensive. He was a head coach for a private Christian school in Charlotte, North Carolina. He was a coaching intern for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he's been a defensive line coach for the Arizona Cardinals and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A lot of people say that, he's not ready and whatnot, but it's kind of like that old trope where it's like, oh, well, how do you know I'm not ready if I don't get the opportunity type thing? You know what I mean?
Sure.
What are your thoughts on Brentson Buckner becoming, or, being a possible option for an interim defensive coordinator position if we have to go there?
Well, to me, I think that's a dangerous thing, just again thinking from the perspective of Dirk Cutter or even Jason Light, is are you really going to, like, if you throw in Buckner and he's not good, then your job's on the line. So would you throw in a guy who's never had that kind of experience before and just say, hey, fix this defense and take us to the promised land, that's a risky proposition. I would have, if they were to make that choice, I would hope that it would be based on the interviews they would have had with Buckner, and he'd blow them away. Like, right. Buckner says, hey, I can do this. This is how I would do it, and I have this laid out plan. Like, I would want a calculated decision on that, not just because he's a good defensive line coach. I'm not as high on Buckner becoming defensive coordinator just simply because, it is an interim basis, so it is a little bit less of a risk. But, and also, as most people say, it really can't get worse. But also, you'll have a guy, and this will be an issue with anybody taking over in an interim position, you'll have a guy who is now running somebody else's defense. And right. Does he know it well enough? Has he been in it long enough to be able to run that kind of defense? So Buckner, I'm not as high on as probably the next guy you're going to mention as an interim basis, just for that reason. The lack of experience would scare me a lot.
I love how you've already determined who my next guy is.
Because it's probably the same guy I think of.
Right. And before I do say it, I want to say thank you for the super chat, Ethan Ennis and Rocco. Rocco said that Levante and Quan have been bad in pass coverage so far, which what do you think about that? Yeah,
that's true. I especially Quan.
I would say Levante's doing better than Quan, but
neither of them are playing to the level that we're used to them playing. I will say that. Like Quan is just. It seems like he's just throwing darts. He's just choosing a hole and he's hitting it, which is great when he's accurate, when he's good at it, when he guesses right. But other times he just completely whiffs, takes bad angles. I think Kamara really exposed Quan, and speedy backs like that are really gonna expose him unless he gets a little bit better on the technical side of things. And then Levante, I don't know, man. He hasn't looked good. Hopefully he picks it up. I remember maybe it was 2016 where he had kind of a bad start like this, and then he picked things up. So
right. And then Ethan super chat said, "Don't outdate me, boy." So there you go. But moving on to the second guy I want to talk about for an interim replacement, it's Mark Duffner. Whoa, who would have guessed? Oh my gosh. Now, I've dubbed Mark Duffner the Duffinator just for comedy purposes. The 65-year-old linebackers coach for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Corey, he has a very extensive history as a coach, okay? Mm-hmm. He's been the defensive coordinator for Cincinnati from 1977 to 1980, Holy Cross to 1981 to 1985, and the Cincinnati Bengals from 2001 to 2002, okay? He's been the linebackers coach for the Bengals, the Packers, the Jaguars, the Dolphins, the Buccaneers, and he's been the head coach for Holy Cross in Maryland, where he had a final coaching record of 80 wins, 40 losses, and 1 tie. That's pretty good, right? Like I was checking his numbers from Holy Cross, and he was consistently number one. He had Holy Cross number one in their division and whatnot. And actually, Mark Duffner has a history with Dirk Cutter and Mike Smith and somebody else who's on this list. He was the linebackers coach for the Jacksonville Jaguars when Mike Smith was the defensive coordinator there, and Dirk Cutter was the offensive coordinator there. Mm-hmm. So there's a little bit of a history there. So you got to think that he would be the favorite, right?
Yeah. I mean, to me, he's the obvious choice to take over interim. I mean, and this may also lead into. I was about to say it's all kind of a moot point because Mike Smith's not getting fired. They're just not going to do it. I really think the Bucs as an organization has established hey, we do not fire coaches midseason. So, but anyway, I do think that he has that kind of resume to the point where if and when Mike Smith gets fired, that he would get first crack at it. Like, I think he could take over even if Smith is fired at the end of this year.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I was gonna say Duffner's one of those guys where it's like it's not only that he could be a good interim replacement, he could be an end of the season replacement as well. You know, like he has a lot of appeal. Yes, he's 65 years old. That's a little bit older. That's 6 years older than
heart attack.
He's done. Yeah, pack it up. You know, he's 6 years older than Mike Smith, but you know, just his extensive history, I would tend to agree with you. He would probably get first crack at that,
Yeah.
especially since he's done so many things for so many different teams.
But that's based on resume alone. We don't know like what his scheme would be. We don't know like what his coaching style would be. You know what I'm saying? So he
Right.
has I mean, we probably could look all that up thanks to his resume. We could probably do some deep diving if we wanted to, and probably will if it ends up looking like he'd become defensive coordinator. But
Hmm.
um, based on his resume, yeah, I mean, he would be, for me, he's the obvious choice for interim. And then I definitely think he would get a long look if Mike Smith were to be fired at the end of the year.
Right. Now, Corey, I want to go into three guys who are outside of the organization, guys who are either just don't have a job right now or they're with different teams doing different things. First guy I want to talk to you about, I don't know if you've heard of him. His name's Brent Guy. Do you know who Brent Guy is?
I actually don't.
Perfect. So, fun
Do
fact,
tell.
Brent Guy was with Dirk Cutter all but 2 years of Dirk Cutter's head coaching college career. Okay?
Okay.
He's 58 years old, and he's been the defensive coordinator at Boise State from 1998 to 2000. That was the entirety of Dirk Cutter's head coaching tenure there. He was the defensive coordinator at Arizona State from 2001 to 2004. That's only 2 years less than Dirk Cutter's entire head coaching tenure there. He's the defensive coordinator for Louisville, Tulsa, FIU, and Utah State, where he eventually became the head coach of Utah State from 2005 to 2008. And he had a head coaching record of 9 wins and 38 losses. But we don't need to worry about that because he's a defensive coordinator.
Who wins at Utah State anyway?
Yeah, come on now. That's not even a... He's a linebackers coach for Oklahoma State twice. They fired him and then brought him back. That's pretty interesting. He's a linebackers coach for Utah State, Louisville, UNLV, and Tulsa. So, like I just said, he's one of those... Because you got to figure that if Dirk Cutter, he gets rid of Mike Smith, he's going to bring in somebody he's familiar with, right?
Sure.
Somebody that he knows. Obviously, I know you don't know a lot about Brent Guy. But with that, just from the resume that I just gave you right now, is that somebody who you think could have a potential shot at becoming an eventual defensive coordinator for this team?
Yeah, based on what you said, I mean, the resume is there. I mean, it's like Duffner, or Duffman. I think that's what I'm going to call him, for Simpsons fans out there. Duffman. Anyway.
The Duff Man.
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. Seems to have the resume. Again, it's without knowing anything about schemes or anything like that. Sure.
That's a big thing that I think a lot of people need to consider too. And you just made a wonderful point on that. Is if somebody's running a 3-4, that might automatically disqualify them a little bit.
Maybe not. I mean, I think there was talk last year of maybe we should convert to a 3-4 because we have guys that could excel in a 3-4.
Right.
So
it could be possible. It could be possible. We'll get to a guy who might run a 3-4 in a little bit. But the next thing I want to talk to you about is Mike Nolan. Do you know Mike Nolan?
I do know Mike Nolan.
Okay.
Former head coach of the 49ers.
You got that right, Corey.
Yeah.
So Mike Nolan, he was the defensive coordinator for the Giants, the Redskins, the Jets, the Ravens, the Broncos, and the Falcons. Okay? And he was the defensive coordinator for the Falcons the same time Dirk Cutter was the offensive coordinator for the Falcons and the same time that Mike Smith was the head coach for the Falcons 2012 to 2014. Okay? He's been a linebackers coach for Stanford, Louisiana State, Broncos, Chargers, and Saints, and he was the head coach for the San Francisco 49ers from 2005 to 2008, where he had a final head coaching record of 18 wins and 37 losses. So, that is what it is. But what are your thoughts on Mike Nolan based on your familiarity with him? And, right now he's actually the linebackers coach for the Saints, I believe is what it is.
Yeah,
Yes.
so he does bring intrigue because of his familiarity with the NFC South. However, being an Atlanta resident and having been one during his tenure in Atlanta as defensive coordinator, he was not a popular guy around here as defensive coordinator. And, maybe he was running the defense that Mike Smith wanted, and that's why he was not succeeding very well. Maybe it was because of the players that they draft drafted, and they drafted horribly while Mike Smith was there. I don't know, but Mike Nolan seemed to not do such a great job with the defense, and was not popular around here. So I would be hesitant on that one.
Okay, okay. Plus, I always look at the past. It's like, oh man, he's had a lot of different jobs. Maybe there's a reason. I think we're back. Are we back? Yes, we're back. Okay, we're back. Good.
Let's see.
That darn tropical storm and hurricane and whatnot, it'll get you. We have one. It's awful.
Okay.
So anyway, the last guy that I want to talk to you about real quick is the most popular option to be replaced at the end of the year. You can probably think in your mind who it is. He's a former head coach of a couple of teams, former defensive coordinator, former linebackers coach. It's Jack Del Rio. Oh, that one's a bit of a shock. So, looking at Jack Del Rio and what he's been able to do, he's the defensive coordinator from 2002 for the Carolina Panthers, and he was the defensive coordinator for the Denver Broncos from 2012 to 2014. He's the linebackers coach. He was the linebackers coach for the Saints and Ravens, and he was the head coach for the Jacksonville Jaguars from 2003 to 2011, and the head coach for the Oakland Raiders from 2015 to 2017. He has an overall head coaching record of 94 wins, 97 losses. Fun fact, he was the head coach of the Jaguars when Dirk Cutter, Mike Smith, and Mark Duffner, the Duffinator, the Duff Man, when they were all there. He was the guy in charge for multiple years. What are your thoughts on Jack Del Rio? Because I know he's a lot of people's favorite, and a lot of people cited that the only reason he doesn't even have a job right now is because of the overwhelming power of John Gruden. Because essentially their point was that he brought the Raiders back from the depth and actually was making them a relevant team again.
Right.
And then John Gruden kind of expressed his interest coming back into coaching. The Raiders were like, okay, we want you, type thing. You know what I mean?
Sure. Well, like what almost happened to Cutter.
Exactly, what almost happened to Cutter.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on Jack Del Rio?
Yeah, so as a head coach, I'm not a big fan of his. However, his defenses, from what I remember, and this is off the top of my head, his defenses seem to do fairly well and pretty consistently, too. Now, of course, in Oakland, he had guys like Khalil Mack, but I think I would be optimistic about Jack Del Rio. And in fact, I feel like you and I have had this conversation a year ago when we were talking about firing Mike Smith the first time. And actually even as a potential head coach candidate, but I'm not a huge fan of his head coach wise, just because I feel like, I just felt like as a head coach, he just never really, he was always mediocre. But as a defense, that does intrigue me. I do hesitate because I think he runs similar defenses to Mike Smith, but he does have success all the way, and he's been part of the NFL this whole time, so he's probably adapted and has had recent success with his defenses. So I'd be more open to Jack Del Rio for sure.
Gotcha. Now, the final thing I want to talk about, and then we'll transition to the Atlanta Falcons game. The final thing that I want to ask you is if you had to rank all 5 of these guys in order, in terms of the one you would like the most versus the one you would not like the most, how would you rank them, essentially?
So this is including the interim possibilities?
Yes.
As well?
Yes.
So I'd probably go Jack Del Rio as the number 1 out of the ones you listed.
As the one you would most like out of the ones that I listed.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
I know that's a little bit of a tough one because
Mike Nolan has the resume, but I'm just not a big fan of his.
I mean, you would know better than a handful of people since you're in Atlanta.
Even after what I said, I would still go with experience over anything. So I might put Nolan, second on that list, and then some of the guys that I actually might put Duffner at number 3. After that, and then I think Buckner would be at the bottom of the pile, and then who was the other one?
The other one is Jack Del Rio, Mike Nolan. It was Brent Guy.
Brent Guy, that's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So mine's a little bit different. I have Jack Del Rio number 1. Number 2, I have Mark Duffner. Number 3, I have Mike Nolan. Number 4, I have Brent Guy, and then number 5, I have Brenton Buckner. So we just kind of switched there. Have Nolan, Nolan Duffner, the Duffinator, the Duff Man, switching them up. But is there anybody outside of the guys that I listed that you would consider for the job? And I know there's so many names.
Man, if like suddenly Rod Marinelli or Wade Phillips became available, I would take them.
I got guys who are available, I guess I should say, that are like at a linebacker coach position, or
Yeah.
I know a lot of people said like former Bucs players,
like Derek Brooks and stuff like that.
Because why not?
Yeah, that would be. Yeah, that would be a shot in the dark right there. Is suddenly like, what if Derek Brooks or Warren Sapp was our
just walked through the door and was like, all right, let's do this. That would be
Yeah, so I have very limited knowledge of defensive coordinators across the league. I only know the really popular ones that are not going to lose their jobs, and the ones that are out there for a reason. So I think the list you have is a fairly good one. Now there's the potential college coaches out there that could take a look. You could take a look at. I mean, like the first defensive coach. And I'm not saying this is a guy that I would want at all, but like thinking of guys like Will Muschamp and guys who like really do typically have good defenses. He was responsible for building Florida's great defense that McElwain was able to take advantage of for a couple of years there. So that's the only one I can think of, but yeah, man, I'd have to do some research on that to find any other ones than the ones you mentioned.
Somebody actually suggested the one of the Ryan brothers, either Rex or Rob Ryan.
Oh, heck no. Heck no.
I think I would do it just for the media circus, man. That would be so funny. I mean, I think they're both kind of busy doing more analyst and commentator type things right now, but hey, if John Gruden can come out of the booth, hey, you never.
No, thanks. I mean, Rob Ryan's defenses were always awful, and Rex Ryan is just too much of a headache, and never actually. The only good defenses he had was with the New York Jets. He never was able to recreate that. So
he took Mark Sanchez to 2 AFC Championship games. Never forget that. Somehow it happens,
Yeah.
But now that we've gotten all that out of the way, Corey, I want to talk about moving forward. That's the last I'll talk about this.
Yes,
at least into another horrific defensive performance that may or may not happen. We don't know. Maybe the defense clamps down here in this next game. But
maybe
looking forward to next game versus the Atlanta Falcons, I want to talk about that game right now and kind of have your thoughts on some things. Okay, so taking a look at the Buccaneers defense versus the Atlanta Falcons offense right now, and things are kind of interesting because the Atlanta Falcons offense it's been somewhat dominant, but they seem to have a couple of good games and then a couple of not good games.
Yeah.
What do you think the Buccaneers have to do to kind of stop this Falcons offense? Because there's a lot of weapons there. But
man, the Falcons offense is very similar to the Bucs, I feel like. I mean, they've got receiving threat after receiving threat. I mean, obviously you have to stop Julio, which we seem to do once a year. Unfortunately, not twice a year. He usually has at least one game where he torches us.
Right.
But at this point, now that if you clamp down on Julio, you have to worry about Calvin Ridley and Mohamed Sanu, which all three of whom are able to burn our inexperienced corners. I'm fearful of these receivers, honestly, because it really is a pick your poison, and you may still get burned by the one you choose. So that's very concerning to me. This offense in Atlanta is as horribly as they're doing as a team. The offense is still potent. The offense is still killing it. I know that they kind of struggled against the Steelers, but even when they struggle, if you give them the ball and you have a one-score lead in the fourth quarter, they're going to score. So I'm fearful. Thankfully, Devontae Freeman is banged up, and their run game hasn't been great. But really, honestly, the one person who I think is going to go off on this game is Tevin Coleman, because he's a receiving threat. He's fast. He's quick. He's the exact type of running back that our defense loves to struggle against and loves to not tackle. So I honestly, if you play daily or weekly fantasy sports, if you bet, I would put in Tevin Coleman. He's probably cheap. So.
One thing I thought, it's like what you just pointed out. The Bucs have a trend right now of just not doing good versus receiving backs under any circumstances. Alvin Kamara in week 1,
Yep.
James Conner a little bit in week 3. In week 2, it was a little bit of Corey Clement and whatnot.
Yep.
And then even in week 4, Tariq Cohen.
Well, what's funny, James, is this isn't new. I mean, like, this doesn't matter who was running the defense. For as long as I can remember, dating back to even the dominant defense we used to have, receiving backs has always given this team trouble. Like, Reggie Bush has always given us trouble. Darren Sproles has always given us trouble. Like, those kind of guys, they always have big games against us. I have no idea why.
It was funny because whenever I heard versus the Eagles, when I heard it, Darren Sproles rolled out for this game, I was like, oh my God, thank you. We don't have to deal with him this year.
Yeah.
And then Corey Clement has a receiving touchdown against us. But I think that's one of the bigger things is Quan Alexander, Levante David. They're most of the time the guys who are covering these receiving backs. And I don't know if it's scheme wise. I don't know if it's. You'd like to think they might be fast, at least somewhat capable. In terms of overall speed, because Levante and Quan, it's not like they're slow linebackers, are they? I don't think so.
They've just been taking bad angles.
Yeah, so I just think it's a situation where they need to get down to fundamentals and
get
a little bit better in those types of situations. The big news for the Bucs offense is this will be the first game that Jameis Winston is back. Jameis Winston will be back. He'll be starting. He has almost an entire full repertoire of weaponry. O.J. Howard has since had, I believe, an MCL sprain or something along those lines. He'll be out for the next 2 to 4 weeks. What are your expectations and hopes for Jameis Winston coming into this game?
I think he's on a mission. I don't know what to think yet, obviously. I mean, if you saw him, I'm sure you saw him on the sidelines during the Bears game. They kept putting the camera on him, and man, he was just stone-faced and not the energetic Jameis. Now, of course, they were getting killed, so, that has a lot to do with it. He hates losing. But, like, when he was just standing back there on the sideline while Fitzpatrick was doing nothing and the defense was giving up all these touchdowns, he wasn't talking to anybody. He wasn't hammering it up with anybody. He was just stone-faced. I wouldn't even say he was pissed or anything. He just was, like, motionless and emotionless. So I feel like we're going to see a different Jameis. I don't know if it's going to be for the better or for the worse, but you can't really judge based on what he did in the last game just because he was, like Dirk said, he was set up for failure to begin with, having to throw as much as he had to and going up against such a great defense. So I'm hopeful for Jameis based on what we saw in the preseason. And I said this in one of my videos that, like, this offense had been cooking for, like, ever since the start of the preseason, that, like, it doesn't matter who's a quarterback. I still believe that this offense can be really good. And I honestly, personally, am looking forward to him coming in, and I want him to just light it up because I live in Atlanta, and I've been hearing it from my coworkers about how they think that the Bucs should trade Jameis Winston or they should cut him because of Fitzpatrick and all this nonsense. It would just be so wonderful to see Jameis throw for 5 touchdowns against the Falcons. And lead us to victory. That would be wonderful. But I don't think he'll get there. I think I expect him to progress. He progressed at the end of last year, and as long as he keeps doing this, that's what I'm looking for, and I expect him to.
What I think's interesting about Jameis versus this Falcons defense in particular is the injuries that the Falcons have faced. They lost both of their starting safeties in Keanu Neal and Ricardo Allen. They lost their starting middle linebacker in Deion Jones, which Deion Jones is arguably one of the better linebackers in the league. Keanu Neal was arguably one of the better safeties in the league, and Ricardo Allen looked like a pretty decently rising star in terms of the other safety position. So I think that's going to help out a whole heck of a lot. The Falcons have been in situations now where they're, at least recently, where their offense has kind of had to help their defense a little bit. We could very well see another shootout. Shootout.
I mean, it's looking like it. I mean, the Falcons' defense is just, they're so beat up, and they're not good at this moment. So we can see it.
And it's not even a situation where it's like, oh, they're minorly beat up. They're majorly beat up. They
big
have
time.
3 of their big-time starters are out for the year. That's a
So
big
imagine if we lost Levante David and like Gerald McCoy, and then at this point Justin Evans. Like that's where the Falcons are right now.
Right.
You know, like losing their like 3 of their best defensive players. They're hurting, and for good reason. So it stinks for them. I actually do have empathy for the Falcons. Probably upsetting a lot of people by saying that my wife's a big Falcons fan, and she's very sad right now. So it stinks for them because I think that they were going to probably win the division had they stayed healthy. But anyway, that gives us a great chance. So
I was gonna say right now they're in a pretty rough spot. They're 1-4.
Yep.
Which isn't good. I guess the one plus side, if you're comparing both the defenses, is, hey, at least our guys are healthier, you know? Minus Chris Conte going to the IR, which is the next thing I wanted to talk to you about. So, you know, a lot of people have been saying this secondary has just not been looking good. And the stats I brought in on you earlier, where we've had one of the worst pass defenses again this year, the Bucs did make a recent signing. They signed former Giants safety Andrew Adams, who has had 17 career starting games, I believe, which is the most in the entire secondary, minus Brent Grimes. It's the most, and it's the most for the safeties right now. He has 1 game over Justin Evans, obviously more than Carlton Davis, Ryan Smith, MJ Stewart. Do you think the Buccaneers should make a secondary type move? Because it's gotten to the point now where I even thought, like, if we don't sign somebody that's could somewhat provide an instant impact, and I know the whole TJ Ward thing happened, but
yeah,
you just gotta hope for something. Because Isaiah Johnson was the starter for this last game.
Yeah,
didn't go that well, especially considering how Isaiah Johnson doesn't have a whole lot of starting pedigree to his name. You bring in a guy which maybe Andrew Adams can work out, but he still needs time to learn the system. Do you think that the Buccaneers should make another type of move? Maybe not just a signing, but maybe even a low-tier trade type of move?
Honestly, the answer is yes. I feel like just anything. Like, I've actually kind of flipped my opinion on this on 2 different things here. Number one, most recently, if you guys follow me on Twitter, I was kind of laughing at people who were all up in arms about us not signing Eric Reed. And like kind of who I cited was a TJ Ward situation. And you just don't know if a guy's going to be able to plug and play like that.
Right.
And I flipped because we're so desperate at safety right now that we should have signed Eric Reed. And I'm kind of baffled as to why we didn't, unless it was for political reasons. And then that I'm super baffled. But and then the other thing that I flipped on is I like the Vea pick. I like Vita Vea, but man, if we had drafted Derwin James, I really think it would have helped us incredibly this year if we had Derwin James on this team.
I've been seeing so much this past week. It's probably been the most I've ever seen it.
Yeah, well, for good reason.
Yeah, of people saying we should have brought in Derwin James, man. You know, he was there even after we traded down. And our safety position is just looking so rough right now. There are a couple of names still out there. Quentin Demps is one of them. Quandary Diggs is another name. But nobody who sits there... I think Eric Reed might have been the last guy where it's like he has Pro Bowl level. He's been to the Pro Bowl before. He's 26. You know, you might be able to get some good stuff out of him. You know, and that's not a knock to Andrew Adams. But, you know, Eric Reed was kind of that last guy where it's like, you know, that's a signing you can feel really good about. You know what I mean?
And that's why I feel like really the only help we would get this year, the only like kind of the last Hail Mary hope is to make a trade for somebody, which it doesn't happen in the middle of the season. And if it does, you're going to have to catch that player up on the defense and the scheme. And considering how we have all these communication issues and stuff, that's going to set us back for a few weeks anyway. So I doubt that anything's going to happen, and that's unfortunate.
Since Jason Light's got here, did he make any... Because, you know, most of these trades happen, like, right before the trade deadline, if anything. Yeah. Has Jason Light ever done anything like that? Because when did he trade for Logan Mankins?
He traded for Mankins in the preseason.
Okay.
If I remember correctly.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that any trades that have happened have been preseason. I don't know if there's ever been any in-season trades with Jason Light.
Okay.
That I remember. I could be wrong on that. Maybe somebody in the chat will remember or something.
Because I even sat there and I thought about it. A lot of people. I just recently made a video talking about Noah Spence and what his future could be with the team. And I said, well, it could obviously go one, two ways. The reason he's been inactive is because, you know, he just has some catching up to do, and they just don't need him right now due to injuries at other positions like cornerback, safety, and the interior defensive line, which can definitely factor in, because if you're moving some defensive ends over to play defensive tackle, then there just might not be enough room come game day. Or they just really don't feel he's that valuable, which has led a lot of fans to feel, oh, we'll just trade him away, you know? And it's even gotten to the point now where I sit there and I think, like, oh, man, we could get a backup safety trading away Noah Spence, you know?
Well, and honestly, I blame all of this on Mike Smith again. Like, I really do. Here's why. So, did you see that article? It was I can't remember who it was from, and I feel bad. Maybe I can find it on Twitter real quick about Mike Smith's kind of his whole strategy and his whole like way of thinking when it comes to building a defense. He goes from the inside out. So he favors like defensive tackles like nobody's business. And that was his strategy, and that was what he did in Atlanta. And if you look at how they drafted in Atlanta defensively, they missed on just about every player. He could not evaluate defensive players, and when he did, he would choose the wrong ones. Like they drafted a ton of defensive linemen during his tenure there, and they were all misses. Like Pereira Jerry is the first one that comes to mind there. Like they, for whatever reason, they just could not. And then as soon as he left, and then they brought in Dan Quinn, suddenly they're just nailing every single defensive pick. They have guys like Deion Jones. They have guys like Keanu O'Neal, obviously, are both injured. But like they're Vic Beasley, you know, Tech McKinley. Like they're hitting on these guys. Now Tech hasn't really done much, and Vic had that one good year, but still way better than they had done in Atlanta. So I bring this back to us where, hey, Vita Vea's sitting there, this big, strong defensive tackle, but then we have this need at safety with Derwin James, and we draft Vita Vea. And I really wonder if that is the Mike Smith effect, and that is him trying to say, hey, this is how we build this defense. We need to get Vita Vea, and that's what they went with. So anyway, that's all I have to say is I kind of blame Mike Smith for the situation we're in at safety.
It could be possible. It could definitely be possible. One guy who a lot of people wanted to trade for was Earl Thomas, and that's not a possibility anymore because Earl Thomas is now on the injured reserve. He's pretty much done. Is there anybody you could think of who the Bucs could potentially trade for at the safety position? Because two names that I kept on tossing around in my head were Ron Parker, the backup Chiefs safety, who was actually rumored to go to the Bucs for the past 2 years now, I believe, in terms of as a free agent signing, and Will Parks. And Will Parks is a backup Broncos safety. Is there anybody in your mind that comes to fruition whenever you think of a possible trade candidate? And like, I know it's tough because to think of all the safeties in the league right now.
I know. You think we could trade for Bradley McDougall?
Maybe. Who knows? You know. And
now that Earl Thomas is out, they're
they're gonna rely on Bradley McDougall probably.
What blows my mind, or Keith Tandy for that matter, like these two guys who were solid on our defense that we just let them go. It's just like, why did we do that? So to answer your question, I can't think of the guys that would possibly be on the trade block. Especially backup safeties. I don't know the league well enough for that. So
my thought process was because recently Josh Robinson actually just signed with the New Orleans Saints, because of course he did, and Keith Tandy just signed with the Atlanta Falcons recently, because of course he did. Both, and I believe Keith Tandy had some type of very nice special teams play for the Falcons, and obviously Josh Robinson is Josh Robinson. He'll do his job very well, I imagine. My thought process was if Keith Tandy was a free agent when Chris Conte got hurt, he would have been re-signed. Guaranteed, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
I think he would have been re-signed, and they would have probably started him even, because he would have been the safest signing. Now there's a whole lot of uncertainty. There's not a whole lot of people to trade for. Again, I could only think of a couple people to sign: Quentin Demps, Quandary Diggs, maybe another safety out there and whatnot. What else would you do to try and fix this secondary right now? Is it fixable, or is it just kind of a situation where it's just like, we're just not in a good position?
We're really not. I mean, get healthy is the answer to that. I mean, like that's it. I mean, Whitehead's got to come back and he's got to play and he's got to play well. I it looks like that once he does, it'll be Whitehead and it'll be Evans back there, and that's a little bit of hope that I have because Whitehead did show like he is doing well. So
Yeah.
but even then, he's still a rookie. So yeah, there's not a whole lot of hope, James. Unfortunately, we just need to really get better at rushing the passer because if not, then it's going to be the Bears game over and over and over again. So.
I think that's a big thing too. Is that the pass rush? That's going to play a big part of it as well. I do have hope in Jordan Whitehead. I think Mike Smith actually came out in a recent press conference and said, "Oh, he's like a heat-seeking missile," or it was either Dirk Cutter or Mike Smith. They're giving good praise to Whitehead. He's kind of the one of the only hopes we have left. The safety position opposite Brent Grimes, because I like Andrew Adams as a player, but it's tough to get signed out at week 3 or week 4, and say, "All right, go get him,"
Now, yeah, I mean, maybe you throw Ryan Smith back there because he has some experience,
right?
But you want him at corner, so we need him at corner.
Yeah, we actually do need him at corner.
Yeah.
I know some people even thought about re-signing T.J. Ward, which
Ugh, that's not happening.
I don't think that's gonna happen. Not because the Bucs wouldn't consider it, because T.J. Ward wouldn't consider it.
There's no way he would come back.
He is never coming back to the Buccaneers, and it's not. He doesn't want to. I don't think the Bucs don't want to. I think he doesn't want to.
Yeah. Is he still out there, by the way?
Yeah, he's a free agent.
Wow, interesting.
Ethan just pointed out in the chat, he said, "Yeah, isn't it crazy that 2 years ago Bradley McDougall and DJ Swearinger were safeties for us?
Wow, that is crazy.
And now they're both Pro Bowl, a potential Pro Bowl caliber players. I think DJ Swearinger made the Pro Bowl last year, and now Bradley McDougall is doing good as well. It's another one of those things where it's like, all right, man, a Bucs player leaves the Bucs, goes off and does good. It happens. I think it happens probably once a year."
Well, it happens to every team, I hope. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm sick of it happening.
You would like to think it happens to every team a little bit.
But yeah, you're right. Well, anyway.
But anyway, Corey, I want to get your final thoughts and what you're looking most forward to for this Falcons game. What are you most looking forward to, and what are your biggest fears? If you had to give a score, what kind of prediction would you give?
Okay, so
I know it's a loaded question.
It is. So what I'm looking forward to is definitely Jameis. I think this is a great game for him to come back to. It's not at home, so I feel like there's less pressure there for him. Not that he is one to crumble under pressure, but he is coming out here. He's now putting this on his shoulders, and he thrives under that situation. I really think he's got a great opportunity against an injured defense to show that he's here and he's here to stay. He's now playing for a contract. I know they picked up his 5th-year option, but after everything that's happened, he's now in danger of not signing a second contract. So this is all him. This team is his, and we're going to live or die with him. And I'm actually looking forward to that because I think he's going to do great. So I am looking forward to that. Obviously, and I've said this before, I'm most scared of the Falcons' offense itself. There's just too many weapons, and this defense is just not good enough for that. The one hope there is that the Falcons' offensive line has not been doing all that well. So if ever there was a time for this defense to live up to their potential, this would be a great time to do it. And I think that is if we don't give Matt Ryan time to throw like we did Drew Brees or really any other quarterback, that we'll have a fighting chance there. Mm-hmm. So it'll be a high scoring game. It's got to be. The NFL is silly. Like every game you feel like it's going to be high scoring, it suddenly isn't. but there's just no way this isn't a high-scoring game, the way both of these defenses are. So it's going to be a shootout. It'll probably come down to the last possession. Hopefully it will. And by that, I mean, hopefully we're competitive this time.
Yeah, not for the negative. I hope it comes down to a last possession. Not because I want us to not get blown out.
Yes, exactly, which is really sad. I do have hope. I do have a smidgen of hope for this defense because remember, this was a defense that, okay, yeah, got lit up by the Saints like everyone does, but they held their own against Philadelphia until late. Mm-hmm. They held the Steelers scoreless after halftime. So they've shown flashes of being able to put it together. They just got to do it for a whole game. So there's a glimmer of hope there, and that's what I'm hoping to see. It's just unfortunate that this offense is not the one to do that against. So final score, probably something like 38-35, and I'm just going to say Bucs because I'm going to be a homer.
There you go. I agree with that. I agree with all of your points. One thing I will say that I'm looking forward to is just consistency in the kicking game. I'll say that every week because I still, I think people have, not underrated, but they've taken for granted Chandler Catanzaro and what he's been able to do so far.
He's been solid.
He's been solid. The Big Cat's been solid, and we forget that things were so much worse last year. So that's kind of the one thing I'm looking forward to as well. But Corey, that's it. We've been going for a while now. We've been going for over an hour. I want to thank you so much for joining me. For everybody who's still watching, the 29 to 30 of you that are watching, you can go check out Corey on the Play Reaction. Corey, don't you have a live stream coming up tomorrow?
Yeah, I do. Tomorrow night at 8 p.m., so in 24 hours, I'll have a live stream on my channel, and I'll have a special guest that I haven't had before. His name is Aaron. He runs a YouTube channel called Unnecessary Bluntness, and he covers the entire NFC South. He's pretty cool. He's got some really cool takes. He's actually a Panthers fan, but thankfully we're not playing them this week, so I think we can hate on the Falcons together. So that should be interesting, and I look forward to getting his take on our team, but also his take on the Falcons, and we'll get kind of an update on the rest of the division if you haven't been paying attention. So definitely check it out.
There you go. And Corey, you also have a video coming out later this week, possibly, right? Or
actually, no. I'm taking a break from it. It's a bye week for me too. So that's why I'm doing the live stream.
Okay, there you go.
I'll have a typical video next week after the Falcons game.
Perfect. So guys, you heard it. Tomorrow at 8 p.m., go check out Corey at the Play Reaction. I'm going to go ahead and put one more link in there. Go share his channel. Go share his videos. He's almost to 1,000 subscribers. Corey, I'm sorry we couldn't get you to 1,000 in this live stream, but
that's all right.
Hopefully you'll reach it sometime very soon. Again, I want to thank you. Thank you for talking about Mike Smith, the defensive coordinators, possible replacements, and a little bit of a preview for the Falcons game. You're one of my best friends on here, and I love working with you. So
always a pleasure. Thanks for having me on, man.
Of course. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Let us know what you think about all this down in the comment section below and whatnot. And as always, we will see you in the next video or the next live stream. But until then, and as always, goodbye for now, and go Bucs.